Hello and welcome to Shooting the Shit. It's Monday again.
So embarrassing.
Okay, more Blue Peter every time. Anyway, you may notice that we advertised today's session that we were going to have a man here and we were going to talk about raising boys. And we have no man because the man has been called off to do a very important job.
Busy work.
Yes, he was very, very necessary and very needed. So he's had to go and do that. He's going to come back at another time and do another session with us. And we will talk then about raising boys. But seeing as neither Hannah nor Marisha have raised any boys, we thought there's no point talking about that. So we said, what are we going to talk about today? Shall we talk about imposter syndrome? Shall we talk about the working age pension for women? No. We're going to talk about Cardi B, female empowerment, and is female empowerment a myth, or is Cardi B's song a myth? If you haven't watched what we're talking about, the WAP video, I suggest you go and watch it. There's a version on YouTube that has the lyrics, so you can get the full impact. But generally speaking, female empowerment. What is it? Is it real? Have we achieved it? Or are we kidding ourselves? These and more questions to come. So,
which we're going to make up on the spot because we decided it literally 15
Bear with me whilst I Google this.
And I just apologise to my horrible dog as well, woofing in the background.
Yes, you may. And you'll probably have to do it many more times before the end of the session, won't you? Right. So, Marisha, what does female empowerment mean to you?
Oh, God, don't come to me first. We discussed this last time. When Hannah's here, she goes first.
Right, Hannah has, to be fair, got the most opinions about this. So, Hannah, what does female empowerment mean to you?
It is, well, it's not being able to get your tits out with impunity. It is being able to make the choice about, I suppose, whether or not it's making the choice about your own sexuality, about your own worth, it's your own opinions, and not being railroaded into a existing form of femininity by a patriarchal society.
Okay. Marisha, anything to add?
They were a lot of words.
Yeah. Big ones too.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. But yeah, so I agree with that. You know, I think empowerment is not a case of, you know, getting everything out, you know, having a perfect, what is deemed perfect, you know, figure, or, you know, a perfect face, and all of that kind of stuff. I think empowerment is being comfortable, you know, in your own space, in your own skin, with your own opinions. There's lots of elements, I guess, to feeling empowered and being empowered. But I don't think that actually translates to, you know, overt sexuality. That's a very different thing.
So the reason that girls, and it does tend to be kind of young girls, because they've got fit bodies and nice boobs and they don't mind getting them out, but the reason that they would say that is that they say that they are reclaiming it. So in the same way that, you know, black people reclaim the N-word, in the same way that you know, people throughout generations, and gay people, for example, have reclaimed the gay and the word queer and all the rest of it. Girls who do this and claim that showing off their bodies and getting their tits out and showing the bum all over the place, the reason they say that's female empowerment is because they claim that they are reclaiming their bodies and reclaiming that sexuality and using it in a way that makes them feel empowered. So why is it okay for gay men to reclaim, or gay women to reclaim the word queer, and black people to reclaim the N-word, but women getting their tits out is not empowerment? Why is that?
Because you have an answer to
I got an answer.
I have an answer for fucking everything. Because reclaiming the word queer reclaiming the N-word came with a level of legal equality and societal equality that enabled that word to be used, to be eradicated. So I now couldn't say the N-word, and I couldn't call somebody queer as a slur, and why would I? And because I'm a horrible homophobe, and so that's almost been outlawed. And at the moment, objectification of especially young girls, but also women of all ages, is still absolutely rampant in society. And until that's no longer acceptable, by playing up to it and by objectifying yourself, you're not reclaiming it, you are contributing to the objectification of women and the sexualization of young girls, because it's still unbalanced.
I agree. Sure.
Also, it's words, isn't it? You know, saying the word queer, for example, does take the power out of it, whereas showing your boobs, you're not taking the power away. You know, you're still, the power is still there. You are still an object of the male gaze. You are still contributing to that wealth of, you know, imagery of young girls as just having their tits out. So you're not taking power away from it. If anything, you're adding to it.
I agree. I think there's very much, you know, that, you know, just because it doesn't mean anything different. You know, there's still people have got, you know, if you get your tits out, then people will still have those same responses, that same kind of, you know, feedback, those same kind of thoughts. So it doesn't have the same kind of power, essentially. You know, the other words, I guess, do. And I think there's also the worrying side of it, if you like, is that as grown up, you know, adult women, we can choose to play up to that or not. And, you know, let's face it, some do, some don't, you know, some will absolutely, you know, play on all of that kind of stuff. I'll always have a joke about, you know, that kind of stuff too. However, you know, to be role models for young girls who don't understand what it means, and therefore, you know, will copy or do or say or look, you know, a certain way. They don't really understand, you know, what is coming across off the back of that, what that means off the back of that, and how they are being objectified off the back of that. And that's the worry about these kind of things, you know.
Absolutely. I think it's important that we say, though, that even reclamation of the words, you know, the queer and the N word there's not equality. Like, we're not saying, oh yeah, you know, the gays are all right now. Equality. Yeah, it's solved.
Yeah, racism and homophobia don't exist anymore. Sexism is the last bastion.
Point that out.
Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely right, isn't it? So I a few months ago, and I don't want to kind of name names or be derogatory here in any way, but I met a young girl who she'd been viciously bullied throughout school. And she was fighting back against that and reclaiming that by having an Instagram account. And she wanted to become an influencer and build up a social media profile and have this Instagram account. And fair play to her, you know, she was making a good old crack at it. But the vast majority of posts that she was doing was just her essentially semi-naked, because she'd had such a bad image of her body. She had body dysmorphia, she thought she was ugly, and she was reclaiming that by posting pictures of herself being very provocative, wearing essentially nothing. And I said to her, you know, well, how do people respond to this? What kind of response do you get to this? She said, oh yeah, no, a lot of it is, you know, men who just want to be perverts, and that's the main thing. Again, I can understand where she was coming from. I can understand what her motivation was in wanting to do that. She felt empowered. She felt, because men were suddenly sending her messages telling her that she was beautiful, that she felt empowered, and she didn't feel like she was ugly and fat and horrible. But she wasn't really empowering anything, was she? She was still conforming to that stereotype of the only way a woman can have power or have value, is to be worshipped by men. And again, we are still buying into that same patriarchy, aren't we?
And children are still bullying, like that. For that girl to have been bullied at school, I assume because she was being called ugly or something, if that's the response. For that, you know, for that to be a bullying weapon, it's fucking horrifying that young girls are judging each other on how sexy they are and how easy to objectify they are. And I just think it's horrifying that like Russell Brand. It is Russell Brand, isn't it? I always get Russell Brand and that astrologist mixed up. Russell Brand, which one is
Russell Brand? Yeah, Russell Brand is the one who does your horoscope.
and which is
the comedian. I always get him mixed up with Russell Kane. I get all the Russells mixed up.
which one's Russell Kane? The one with the
He's
hair.
the Essex one, yeah, with the hair. Yeah.
So one of the Russells did that video saying that it's not empowerment because it's playing into a patriarchal view of what we've just said, and he got fucking slated for it.
Yes, I've watched that as well. It's right.
He is right, but everyone was saying like, "Who the fuck asked you, Russell Brand?" What do you think about that? Russell Brand, Russell Grant, Russell Kane,
Russell.
What do you lot think about that?
No, I absolutely think it's right. It is exactly conforming to the stereotype. You know, again, we're essentially teaching young girls that the only way you can be valued and be beautiful is if you are being adored again by the male gaze. But that again is being massively rewarded. If you look on it, spend 5 minutes on Instagram, and this is the message that is being given out, and it's being rewarded because girls and women who are doing this, they are being rewarded by clothing companies that are sending them free stuff, and perfume companies that are sending them free stuff, and cosmetic companies that are sending them free stuff. Because again, we're playing into that whole thing of, you know, we've got to look beautiful. Our faces are not beautiful unless they're plastered in makeup. Our bodies are not beautiful unless they're wearing the right clothing. Our hair is not beautiful unless we've got 6 tons of product in it and we're doing all of this shit to it. You know, the whole beauty industry, everything is built on this patriarchal foundation. Yeah,
it's a capitalist patriarchal foundation. I mean, that WAP video is just like nauseating, and the lyrics were just nauseating.
Okay, so you know, most people I would hope have watched the WAP video, not the working age pension video. I just clarify for people like me that get confused. The Cardi B WAP video. Tell us what it's about, Hannah. What happened?
Oh, fucking hell! WAP stands for. I don't even say it.
Oh,
come on, Marisha, you say it. It's
okay, Marisha. You've got a poppy bag.
Pussy is what it stands for.
Pussy.
I know, right? Which is like, but that's graphic, isn't it? That, you know,
it's fucking graphic. And it starts off with this loop of "there's some hoes in this house," which I also have a fucking problem with. And then it's just Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and Kylie Jenner, who can get right in the bin, are just like parading around in this mansion wearing nothing and playing with all manner of phallic symbols, doing what women were doing in rap videos in the 90s, except there was a man standing in front of them rapping over it. Mm-hmm. Back then everyone said, oh, you know, it's the objectification of women, it's fucking awful. And yes, it was. And it was kind of reined in a bit. And now people are saying that because it's 2 lasses doing it, that it's okay. But that song was written by 2 lasses and 3 men. And you have to, I think, when you're looking at whether or not something is sexist or objectifying somebody or part of the patriarchy, you have to ask yourself, if it was a man doing this, or if it was a woman doing something a man's doing, would there be an uproar? And if they'd stuck a man in front of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, there would be an uproar. Mm-hmm. And rightly so. And there should be a fucking uproar now, because it is blatant objectification. And I know that I feel like we sound like, you know,
old women,
cardigans, yeah. But honestly,
young girls should put the proper clothing on.
You'll catch your death in that.
It makes me sad. Not that they've done this song and this video, but that young lasses are saying that this is the embodiment of female empowerment, and aren't they a role model for young women everywhere? Because look at them, they can get the tits out and feel confident about it, and that's what makes me sad. It's not female empowerment.
I think there's such a difference these days with, you know, I think when I was growing up, I'm going, you know,
so old.
I know, right? But there was like a real difference. It was quite clear that, you know, that what happened in those, you know, 90s, 2000s rap videos was a video. But now it's real life. You know, if you go in town on a night out, the girls in town look the same as they do on the telly. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's almost like they do actually look at that and aspire to. I am all for, you know, empowering women in terms of sexuality and it being spoken about and it being taught about and that being a conversation. But this, you know, this video doesn't really do that. It's almost like it's just doing it for the sake of it. You know, oh, we're allowed to say pussy on the telly, so let's. Do you know what I mean? We're allowed to gyrate. You know,
the thing that gets me about it is that it when you listen to the lyrics and, you know, take the video out of the equation and just listen to the lyrics, it is still all about sexually pleasuring men. It's about the fact that she's got a wet pussy and she is going to use that to the sexual gratification of men, not herself. She's not going to, you know, it's not her and her mate having a nice time together, having a nice day and doing some nice things with a rampant rabbit. It's not that. It's
having a nice time together.
Having a nice mummy and daddy cuddle. It's still about sexual gratification of men.
I mean, the one bit that stood out to me is like being particularly upsetting and nauseating was something about choking on a dick. Like, oh my God.
I'm putting it so far, like she's deep throat. I mean, we do have to remember it's like middle of the afternoon here, so we probably have to be a little bit sensible. But yeah, she's talking about deep throating, isn't she? Which is, you know, I mean, not that I do it very often, ever even, but it's not nice. Why do you fucking choke yourself like that? Jesus.
But that's it. Doesn't that also then kind of tap into, well, it's you know, almost a step away from, you know, soft porn, isn't it? Because it moves into that kind of territory in as much as, you know, the guys are like, oh, well, I've seen it on a porno, therefore that must be how
what women like.
That's what it's like. Yeah, exactly. Rebecca has put a really good comment on. So hi, Rebecca. Pat's just commented, what the hell's he doing? Welcome to Shooting the Shit, Pat. We do say that, you know, it's got a warning on it for a reason. But no, Rebecca's put that, you know, if we're going to be objectified anyway, then we might as well be in control of it and get paid for it. And that is precisely the argument that they put forward, isn't it? You know, if we're going to do it, at least, I don't know, have any of you watched the new documentary on Channel 4 that's about Misguided? I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen a few trailers about it, and it's basically it's a Manchester fashion label, and they're led by women, built by you know, run by women. Women are in who it's aimed at and all the rest of it. And again, they are selling it as this kind of female empowerment thing. You know, they're women in business at the forefront of the fashion industry doing all of this. But it is very much about that sexual objectification. And they say on that, you know, oh, well, we're using our bodies, we're empowered. You know, if you're going to look at my body, I'm going to get paid for it. And again, it's that argument. Why is that not empowerment then? If women are able to say, well, if you're going to objectify me, you might as well, you know, pay me for it. It's prostitution, isn't it?
Yes. And again, if you flip it, would a man, like, what's the male equivalent of that? Well, if I'm using my brain, I may as well get paid for it. Or if I'm using my strength, I may as well get paid for it. Or, you know, if I'm using my skills that I've hard won over the years of experience, I may as well get paid for it. There is no male equivalent of that. And therefore, it's still objectification. You are still playing into this patriarchal ideal of what a woman is for, and it's not for our brains, our intelligence, our humor, our skills, our nurturing. It's for our base holes, and that's it. And if you, I know, sorry Marisha, but Rachel keeps and whether you are getting paid for it or not, you're still objectifying yourself. And by getting paid for it, that's not empowerment, because you're not able to say, this is who I am as a woman, take it or leave it. You're saying, I will fit into your very narrow idea of what a woman is for, and everything's great. And it's not.
Don't you think as well, though, you know, on that you know, male equivalent, you know, okay, you've got male models that will, you know, take the tops off, and women will, you know, fawn over and, you know, comment and such like. But here's the thing, you can, there's that whole hashtag free the nipple, because it's okay for, a man to look a certain way, to be sexy, to get his body out and all of that kind of stuff. But it's not okay for a woman just to have a body, to have boobs.
Yes, to have a body, yeah.
And because instantly, if they show a bit too much, then it's instantly sexual. That's it. And there's no other, way
and
around.
men will not be able to control themselves, and this is
our responsibility.
Our responsibility to keep our bodies covered, because men will not be held responsible for what happens if we let a little bit of nipple show on a French beach.
I mean, you're not even allowed to breastfeed a fucking baby in places without people judging you because you've got your nipple out. And I just think,
the body,
fuck yourself.
You know what? As well, some very sensible and reasonable people who I know have posted things that are anti-breastfeeding and saying, they don't want to see it. They don't want to look at a woman's boob when they're in a cafe. And just that whole, again, it's that whole premise that all boobs are for is sexual. They're not there to feed your baby. They're there to be sexual. And, we can't have anything else faced with us.
I mean, we talk about this woman every week and we've never bothered to learn her name. But the MP whose dress slid off her shoulder in the Houses of Parliament.
I think she's called Tracy, isn't she?
She is called Tracy, but...
A few minutes. Is it Tracy?
I said to call her Tracy Beaker, but it's not Tracy Beaker.
And she was immediately objectified for it. And, oh, what a slut. What a fucking slut. Dominic Cummings, and again, I've had this argument, could walk around with his arse hanging out and no one says what a slut. But Tracy's dress comes off her shoulder slightly as she's talking. Like, Rachel, look, your cardigan's come off your shoulder. Cover yourself up, you fucking tart.
Get it out of any opportunity.
But coming back to that kind of being
Brabin.
Tracy Brabin, that's it. That being paid for it argument, because this is what happened, and I don't want us to go too deep into the whole porn scene again, but this happened in porn about 10, 15 years ago, didn't it? The men were paid vast sums, and the women were paid a fraction of the price, the good old gender pay gap back in full force again. And women said, hang on a minute, this isn't fair because we're doing half the work. We want to be paid equally. And most of them are now paid equally. And so all of a sudden they're pretending, to them, that they've now got equality, that they are now equal to men because they're getting the same wage for doing the same work. And again, but it's still, you're still playing into those stereotypes. So how do we break those stereotypes? Because I mentioned before, this is the exact same argument that was had in the 90s when there was all the furore about the page 3 girls, and there was poor old Gail Porter had her arse slapped all over the Houses of Parliament, didn't she? And you just literally could not move in the 90s for boobs and arse on every magazine and in every newspaper. And we had this whole argument of it's not empowerment and lad culture and all the rest of it. We're 20 years further down the line now, and nothing's happened. We're still having this argument.
Well,
why is it happening?
To be fair, page 3 doesn't exist anymore, and a lot of lads mags have been taken off the shelf or put higher up in a paper bag. And but I suppose now, is that because you don't have to buy it, you just go online and it's all there? I mean, I think getting rid of page 3 was a kind of big win, but I was reading one of the Sunday, it might have been the Sunday Telegraph or something awful, and there was an article it was lying around at somebody else's house, not mine. It could have been the Times. It was one of those. It was big. I had to hold it like this.
Like you're a real man.
Yes, I felt like a man.
Not being so big. They don't need to be that big, do they? I mean, like, what do you have to do to fucking wallpaper? That's it. It's just like...
Yeah. Well, no, because we're women, we just need small magazines so that we can put them in our handbags, don't they? That's what
my arm gets tired after 10 minutes of holding take a break.
Yeah.
I've got to have a job.
The way you were going with that then, to be honest.
The cramp. Oh God, we need to stop warning on this video. But there was an article about how a rise in like paddleboarding has led to a lot more calls to the Lifeboat Association, and the Lifeboat Association have run off their feet, going to British beaches, helping inexperienced paddleboarders out the water. And the picture that accompanied it was a giant like raft with 5 probably underage girls or on the cusp of legality in bikinis, laughing, like all skinny and beautiful, all upright on this paddleboard, not in the water in danger, happily paddleboarding. And I thought that fucking sums it up, doesn't it? That there was this serious article about the Royal Lifeboat Association, or whatever they're called, needing to using up resources, and they illustrate it with like
girls,
the cusp of legality, girls in bikinis, in the fucking Times. Thought that sums it up. So in some ways we have moved on, but in some ways we really, really haven't, and there's just ways around it. And actually, by getting rid of page 3, has it shamed women's bodies more?
Well, I mean, they do now have to have every excuse. I mean, whenever you see, whenever there's that annual article of there's been a little bit of hot weather and everybody's gone to the beach, which obviously was made even more exciting this year because we could shame all the people who were going to the beach because of COVID. So that was even better. But it's always young girls frolicking in the sea in the bikinis. And whenever they do A-level results day, it's always a string of young girls stood in a row with waving the results around. It's never
with one sloppy twat in the background.
Yeah. It's never, fat women with their belly hanging over their bikini bottoms or anything, is it? It's
always. Damn it, I want to be in the newspaper.
Yes, exactly.
I think it is the media, to answer that question about, has page 3 made a difference? I guess I've not really given it a great deal of thought until now. But it's almost like, well, actually, is it because it's just more acceptable now? Because actually, if you read the column of shame, is it, or whatever it is on the Daily Mail, it's always about, so-and-so showing their, ample bosom, or, race car curves or whatever bollocks they want to curve. It is that though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's always some bullshit that goes with it, and it's supposed to be, oh well, that's okay then, that they're prancing around in a little bikini, whereas that I don't think there was as much of that before. I think it's just moved.
It's just, I mean, if you look at kind of Formula One, for example, sports is a great example of this. When you had Formula One before, and they always used to take the photos of the cars with like the girls draped over it, didn't they, wearing, semi-clad things. And nowadays that they said, hang on a minute, this is a bit sexist having girls draped over bonnets all the time. So now they have the girls carry the umbrellas. So the girls stand in their skimpy bikinis holding the umbrellas for the drivers so they don't get sun or wet on them, rain on them or anything. And also in boxing, we were watching a boxing match back the other night. And the minute they have like the break, whatever they call that in boxing, the girls come out with the things, prancing it round in the bikinis around the ring, round 3's coming up. So it's exactly the same. We've banned it and said, hang on a minute, we can't have this overt sexism going on here. It's not fair. This is the 21st century. So instead, we've just got this insipid sexism. Well, we've got to put the girls somewhere. Where are we going to put them? Have them come out the end with a big board. Have all an umbrella. That's a good girl job, isn't it?
That's a girl job. That's a job for girls, definitely. And you can't do that dressed either, can you?
No.
Who agrees?
Well, your clothes would get wet if it was raining, so that's why they've got to be naked.
Yeah. It's just sad, isn't it, that it's more upsetting that lasses think that this is empowerment. Be quiet. Rather than I mean, I think women will always be objectified. I don't think there's any way that we can get around that. I think the male gaze is always going to exist, and it has for centuries. But I think if anyone thinks that Cardi B is empowering women, they're fucking kidding themselves, or they don't understand the problem to begin with.
And I come back to, just go and spend 5 minutes on Instagram looking at the pictures of young girls, and even middle-aged girls. When we ran a campaign last year, didn't we, with Grow Traffic, and it was around aimed at pregnant mums and new mums and stuff. And even then, when you look at the kind of influencers who are there as young mums, they're not people sat there breastfeeding, wearing their paper nappies because they've just had a cesarean. They are women who are perfectly groomed and coiffured and beautiful and airbrushed and wearing the perfect clothing, and the baby is merely an accessory.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get dressed for the first kind of 6 months of having Leon. It's not in the least a real accurate representation of early motherhood, and yet that again is what we are promoting, because that is what the brands want to sell us, that kind of dream lifestyle. And so then the expectations on women become even higher. And are we doing this to ourselves? How do we fight it? It does genuinely feel like it's getting even more oppressive, even though we have this veneer of equality and empowerment, and it's we're in charge of it.
I don't think it helps that celebrity culture shows women getting like snapping back into shape after having a baby, or back in their jeans. I remember Beyonce, when she had the twins, she said something about like, me and my fat stomach or something are having a real moment together, like I'm not in a rush to get back into my clothes. But she said this after having talked about being on a juice diet, or that cayenne pepper shit she does, and sitting there looking like the most glamorous, the most beautiful. And you think what you're saying there is actually you're accepting that there is a part of you that won't snap back because you've had 3 children, but the rest of it, you're going to do your damnedest to get it back to how it was. You're not sitting there like, everything hanging out and looking a disgusting mess like the rest of us do when we've just given birth. But everyone was applauding her for it. And oh my God, she said it's okay to have the tiniest little, pouch of fat on her stomach.
Yeah.
Which makes us all feel so much better. But even if it's not about weight, it's shape, isn't it? Like, look at the fucking Kardashians and the, what is it called? The wisdom tooth.
The wisdom tooth, yeah. So your hips have to come out and go up a bit. I mean, Hannah and I are blessed with the wine-hold hips, and they are fucking ample, for want of a better description. But even then, they don't. We're just wide. We've not got hips that kind of curve out and upwards. And then
nobody does.
Nobody does. That's why they have to have their own fat pumped back into their arses, because there's no other way of creating it. Nobody looks like that. Nobody's that shape. And again, it's just bonkers. But then again, they're airbrushing it. They're airbrushing themselves to look like this. And then when you see them in real life, they don't look anything like that. So again, we are by peddling this myth that we are empowered and that we are in control of our sexuality and that we're the ones earning the money, so we're in charge. We're not, and it's a complete veneer, and it's probably even more dangerous because of that, because we're not just being honest and saying, actually, I'm doing this because this is what society says I've got to do. Really, I'd like to be showing you my quilting patterns, but nobody's interested in that, so I've got to show you my arse instead, and that's the only way I can earn money.
I think there's 2 elements there as well, isn't there? I think there's, if you talk about the Kardashians as example, they are, if not already, just caricatures of themselves for that, airbrushing bullshit, because it's so, aggressive that they give themselves like new faces, new asses. It's like, girl, you don't even look like that. It's
the real Khloe Kardashian, please stand up.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's younger girls that look up to that and look up to that ideal, and think that that's how life is, you know.
And this is the ironic thing about, or the sad thing about it. In fact, I was reading something about Khloe Kardashian at the weekend. I don't even know why, but that was like the changing faces of her, and they had what she looked like in her Instagram photos compared to when she was being filmed on Keeping Up with the Kardashians that day. So what she actually looked like on that day and what she said she looked like on that day. And even she was saying, like, people were saying on Twitter and stuff, like, oh my God, you know, you've used a filter. And she was like, of course I have. It's fucking Instagram. It's Twitter. Of course I've used a filter, you dickheads. Why would you think I wouldn't? But whilst they're openly saying it, you know, of course we've tweeted these pictures. Of course we've done that. What do you expect me to do? Young girls are still then taking that and saying that is what we need to look like, and that is what we need to aspire to be, and that is the ideal image, and it's dangerous. It's really dangerous.
It's worse now, though, I think, than it was like when we were growing up. It was heroin chic. Everyone had to look like they were smackheads and be really
like what's the name? Kate Moss, didn't you? All really skinny and no hips and.
Yeah,
and I mean, well, this has gone back to Renaissance times, hasn't it? You know, the thing then was to be fat and plump, and you know, because you could afford to eat. So yes, this is nothing new.
I was born in the wrong age, obviously.
I would have fucking rocked it in Renaissance.
But some women.
But don't you think, though? I mean, when did we become brainwashed into thinking that this was empowerment? It's like the biggest heist of the 21st century that young girls and a lot of, you know, not normal age women of all ages have now been convinced that hypersexualization of ourselves, as long as we're doing it to ourselves and complicit, that's empowerment. When did that happen?
That's what I mean. That's what, at least before we were saying, you know, well, we've got to do it this way because that's going to make us money. We've got to conform to the patriarchy or the stereotypes or whatever it might be. At least we were being honest about it. Now we're doing exactly the same things. If not, we're doing them even further. But we're doing it under this veneer of, well, it's all right now because we're empowered.
We're doing it ourselves. We're paying for it. We're getting paid. Like, we're paying for it with our own money. We're not having to
like brainwashing, isn't it?
When did it happen?
2006, I think.
I remember now. Yeah, Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Has it just been like a slow march towards compliance? Or do you think it's social media?
I think it's social media. Social media's got a lot to answer for, man. You know, it's all over, isn't it? And the worst thing about that for me is that, you know, okay, we see the people, I guess, that are on social media as well and are adding and taking pictures and fitting in with the stereotypes or whatever. You know, but there's a whole bigger pile of people that we don't see that are hugely affected by all of this bullshit that's out there, you know, that don't talk, that, you know, maybe don't, you know, and it makes, you know, if they are feeling down, for example, in the first instance, then all of this makes it worse. You know, it's just there all the time. You know, it's easy, but it's also easier or easy to be famous now. You know, it started, you know, even with the likes of, you know, X Factor, there's like an idea of, well, it's easy to be famous. People just want to be famous these days. Not for doing anything. I just want to be famous.
I just want to be an influencer. I want some free GIF.
But that comes back to the girl again, the girl I was talking about at the beginning, who that was her goal. She wanted to be an influencer, and she was doing that. She was posting those pictures of herself in the skimpy dresses and her amazing body because she thought she was ugly and she wanted to feel empowered and take the power back. So she was doing that, but that message that she was then passing on to the next generations was exactly that you have to look like me in order to be beautiful. You have to look this good in a bodycon dress from Boohoo, otherwise you're not beautiful. And now that I do look like this, I am beautiful and I can be accepted.
And I'm worth something.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a conversation with her, and she wanted to be an influencer. That was what she wanted to do. And I said, well, you've got to find a thing that is more than just being a sexy young girl, because there are billions of sexy young girls out there. What is going to be your thing that you need to start standing on? You know, you need to have something that's going to make you stand out from the crowd. And that's yeah, but they can't find that, because they think, because they've looked at the Kardashians and think, I just need to look fit in a bodycon dress and I'll be able to make $1 million every month on Instagram.
Oh yeah, or they do the switch over to OnlyFans and they start doing personalized porn.
And isn't there that there's, you know, this probably leads into the, you know, something we've talked about before, in as much as, okay, you know, the females, you know, that are attractive, that have got a brain on them, you know, and want to do something else and want to be, you know, whatever, they have a fucking hard time too, because they're beautiful, you know, or because they are, you know, assumed, you know, there's like I say, it leads into a whole nother conversation, doesn't it? You know, that actually, you know, we can't win either way, you know.
We can't win either way.
There was a girl on Woman's Hour last week, and apparently she came second in Love Island. I was only half listening to it, but she was some sort of scientist, and she had this whole scientific career. I think she had a PhD and all sorts, and she was going through this bit of a life crisis. She thought, oh fuck it, I'll go on Love Island, and she's found love, and she's now with her partner, and they're having a baby, and everything's beautiful. And she was essentially saying that she was on Woman's Hour, and she was talking about the fact that everybody just now thinks that she's essentially a bimbo because she was on Love Island, and actually she's got this whole career, and she's trying to talk about that. But even on Woman's Hour, they were still like, you know, oh, now you're in this relationship, oh, now you're having a baby. And I get people want to talk about that, of course they do, that, you know, that's the thing. But I was still like, we're still praising this woman more for being on Love Island than for the fact that she's got a fucking PhD. And she's on here complaining that people don't want to talk to her about her academic career, and all you're doing is like brush the academic career to one side. Let's talk about your television career. So, you know, again, that was on Woman's Hour. We are, and you know, I do not criticize Woman's Hour lightly, because it is one of the cornerstones of my life.
Email Jane.
Can I send her an email? Yeah. But, you know, again, I bring us back, because we're in the last couple of minutes now. I bring us back to this question: how the fuck do we stop it? What the hell do we do? Do we just teach our daughters that getting your kit out on Instagram is not a good life choice?
I think that's all we can do. I think we can continue talking about it, continue challenging it in, you know, as publicly and as loudly as we can. I do think there would be a lot of people listening to this argument who would say, well, you're just miserable old feminists, aren't you? Like, just, you know, pick up your knitting, button up your cardigan and shut up.
Yeah, let the girls get their tits out.
Yeah, but I think we just need to keep calling it out and raise the next generation to see that this is not acceptable, that this is just further objectification and sexualization of a woman, as that's her primary function.
And that's, you know, boys and girls, you know,
exactly.
whatever gender, you know, it starts young, doesn't it? It is conversations to say that, you know, some of this stuff is not okay. You know, I think there's a lot, I think, you know, we very British, you know, a lot of stuff we don't talk about with kids when they're younger, and, you know, not just about sexuality and stuff like that, just a lot of stuff. And actually, I think it just requires that to start, you know, relatively young. I'm not saying you go, you know, literally into the ins and outs of what for, you know, but there's, you know, there's stuff you can talk about, isn't there? Of course.
Well, you say that. So at the weekend we were watching a film.
Yeah,
we were watching a film. I don't know what the film was, because I wasn't really watching it.
I watched it.
Yeah, it was. Well, it turns out it was fairly similar. But anyway, so there was this group of girls, right? They had this cocaine ring, right? They were the biggest cocaine dealers in the world. This was Leon's choice of film. Leon's 10. So anyway, the girls were having to cut the cocaine. It was only when we got to this point we realised maybe it wasn't such a sensible film, but he was quite into it by then. Oh, it was about cars. That was it. It was about a lad who steals cars, and he's obsessed with cars. So anyway, these girls.
Hilarious.
these girls were all in this warehouse cutting up the heroin, and they were all wearing bikinis. And Leon turned to me and he went, "This is really sexist." He said, "There's absolutely no need for those girls to be doing this completely dressed in bikinis." And I was like, "Yeah, let's just brush over the cocaine cutting them." He's absolutely right. I was super proud of him. I was like, exactly. And that's because we've had those conversations that just because a girl is on the telly doesn't mean she has to be wearing a bikini. You know, she could be fully clothed and still do an equally good job of cutting that cocaine.
Amen.
And there we go. We will finish on that note. Yeah.
Rachel, can I just say, you've got through 45 minutes without mentioning the Seroptimists or the garage.
Oh my God!
Did everybody know that Rachel's a Seroptimist and used to work at a garage?
You know what? Do you know what as well? That one of the key things about the Seroptimist is the empowerment of women. That's one of the main things we work towards. So yeah, check us out on the website. There we go. Thanks very much, guys. There's no point mentioning what we'll talk about next week because even the best laid plans go awry and all the rest of it. Hopefully Hannah will have had a baby by then, but we'll wait and see. Thanks very much for watching, guys.
Yes.
Another good shoot in the shit. See you next week.